And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Karthika Odine. I'm a textile designer and professor. In the spare time, when I'm not designing, I have made it my mission to study and share knowledge about textile design and techniques. So I do that through Designers and Artisans Club. So several of the club members are here. So I'm very happy to see all of you. And I also hold workshops and run classes on textile design in collaboration with the George Washington University and the Textile Museum here in Washington, DC. I welcome you to visit my website, www.designersandartisans.com, to see more about my work and all that I do. All right, so let's get started today. And I am going to start with a brief introduction. Since 2009, I have been traveling to South India to various little villages where they do ikat weaving, and I've been studying this traditional technique. And recently in February 2022, I visited another little village. Then I decided that, it's time to share this with you. So by sharing sights, sounds, and glimpses, I hope to show you and to share with you how design, innovation, and tremendous mastery of complex skills have created the existence of this tradition in South India. I'll go through what ikat is, single and double ikat. Today we have very esteemed scholars and even a curator. So the audience is very mixed. We have, beginner students as well as, people who may already be mastering much of what ikat technique is all about. So please bear with me. But I would like to kind of, explain what the textile is all about. And then I will quickly show you the geographical area that I am focusing on and take you through the process and the people. Some of the unique aspects that I will be talking about today are the binding of the yarns, warping, jointing, all of this I will explain as we go along. You will see little bits of how they weave double ikat, an innovation called the ASU machine, and a veritable tour de force of natural dyed ikat at the end. So stay tuned. So let's start from the very beginning. What is ikat? Ikats are the only resist patterned textiles where patterning occurs before the cloth is woven. Bound with water-resistant material, yarn is dyed in predetermined colors and patterns, and then woven into textiles. Once woven, motifs have feathery edges due to dye seepage, because the dye does, even though it's been tied very tightly, the dye does kind of seep through. And that is the whole beauty of ikat. And yet, the quality of ikat is judged by the crispness of the motifs. So here you can see how the pre-dyed ikat is being woven. So we have both single and double ikats. The most common ikats are single ikats, which are warp ikats. So what happens here is that the warp is bound and dipped in dyes, can be multiple colors. And so if the warp is dyed in multiple colors, you would need several cycles of binding, dyeing, and drying out the warp. Once the dyeing is completed, the warp is mounted carefully on the loom so that the patterns are aligned right. So this is also very important because you could have the dyed parts moving a little bit and then, making the design look all awry. So this part is very important. And then the fabric is woven, and it is usually woven with a weft, which is of only a single color. So apart from the pre-loom and pre-weaving process, which is very time consuming, the actual weaving goes pretty fast, except, if you have a broken thread or something of the sort, but normally that goes very fast. A rarer form of single ikat is the weft ikat. And so here the pattern emerges as the weft, which has been bound and dyed, is woven into the warp. So the warp is very often a single or solid color, and it is the weft which is patterned which is a pre-loom, pre-woven pattern. And so this type of technique is usually used sparingly. Very often we see this in South India in the sari pallus. The pallu is what is draped over the left shoulder. This is my right. Normally the sari pallu is draped over the left shoulder. And at that point, they tend to slow down because when we weave ikat weft, there is a little more attention that needs to be paid for its alignment. And the wefts have to be inserted in the right order, right, to create the patterns. Double ikat is the most complex, where both warp and weft are bound and dyed, and the weaver has to master the superposition of warp and weft patterns. This is a tradition that is very rare. Ikat is practiced all over the world, but double ikat is a technique that we find only in 3 countries: India, Indonesia, and Japan. And I believe India has the most colorful double ikat. Very, very little room for errors here. I'm going to now show you a video. Notice how the weaver goes reasonably fast when he is weaving the black area between the the white polka dots. And then I'll show you how he weaves, how he slows down when he inserts the ikat weft. So let's go. That was reasonably quick. And now see how you guys Okay, so there's a distinct difference in the way they weave, in the way they weave plain cloth and then, when they weave ikat weft. Now that we have an idea of what ikat is all about, let's look at the ikat producing centers of India. Ikat is produced in 3 main states of India: Gujarat, Odisha, and Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Now, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh were actually one state. They got split into 2 in 2014. So earlier they were called Andhra Pradesh. So we have these 3 areas. Gujarat is renowned for its Patola, which is the queen of all ikats. It's a double ikat. They also have a more, minor, lesser known type of ikat, which is ikat mashru, which is a satin weave. So it's a very different type of weave. Most of the other ikats that we are talking about are plain weave. Odisha actually has some very interesting single ikats They are called Pasapalli, Saktapar. These are saris that have a very distinct style. And then Telangana and Andhra Pradesh have what is loosely categorized as Pochempoli. So Pochempoli is a place, but it's also the textiles that are produced there. They produce both silk and cotton. And then there is a very interesting little production, very small production of double ikat called Telia rumals. Now, several theories exist regarding the origins of Ikat, but suffice it to say that it was a technique and a textile that flourished in India as early as the 5th century AD. And we see depictions of Ikat garments in these beautiful mural paintings in the Ajanta caves. And we have also found cotton ikat fragments in Nahal Omer, which is a site which was on the spice route between Gaza and Petra. And similar fragments have been found in the monastery of Agios Lot in Jordan. So the initial fragment from Nahal Omer have been carbon dated, and they happen to be the earliest carbon dated ikat found in the world. And they have also been attributed to India. Now, by the 12th and 13th centuries, weavers had started going to Gujarat, which I just showed you, the place where the Patola is woven. And there a fantastic double ikat tradition developed. And this developed into the most valued, prized, and sacred textiles, especially when exported to Southeast Asia. So what makes a Patola so special? Well, there's lots of, mystery around the way it is created. But if we really look at it carefully, one, it has nearly 5 colors. Most Patola have up to 5 colors. There's a red, there's a blue, there's a yellow, then there's the mix of blue and yellow creating a green. And sometimes the blue can even look like a black, like you can see in this example here. So that is one. So there's multiple colors. 2, if we look at the size of the bindings, so binding is done over a bunch of threads. And if we look at the size, it is 2.5 millimeters to 3 millimeters wide. And then if you look carefully, there's very little seepage. So the designs were meticulously woven to superimpose the resisted areas of warp and weft. And so there are hardly any feathered edges. And that's what made the Patolas so valuable. And of course, they made them in silk. Hand spun silk was the best. So on the diametrically opposite coast of Andhra Pradesh, another type of double ikat used to flourish. This was the Telia rumal that I just spoke to you about. It was a square-shaped kerchief used by fisher folk, and they would also export it to the Middle East. So mostly men wore it around their heads, but they also wore it around their waists. It was, much more rustic fabric, if I may put it that way, made in cotton. But it had its own charm. It was dyed in a very special type of dye, where they used to use oil. So Telia actually means oil. So that's why it was called Telia rumal. And it was kind of petering out, the whole tradition of weaving this type of Telia rumal, when in 1950, we think that the Telia rumal double ikat technique was transferred by people who were weavers to weaving villages around Hyderabad. So Hyderabad is over here, if you can see my arrow. And so two castes, the Pattushali and the Devanga castes, began to weave double ikat. They adopted this tradition, and today they claim it as their own. They are completely, into it, and entire families are weaving these double ikats. And this has led this kind of, adoption of a technique, as well as some government subsidies and programs have made this India's largest ikat textile producing area. So these weavers have mastered both single and double ikat, and they weave dupattas, which are inspired by Telia Rumal. So if you see, if you look at the Telia Rumal, it has these borders. These are border stripes made of undyed cotton, white cotton. And so now they've taken that same idea, but they have translated it into these dupattas. Dupattas are these large scarves that women wear. And they've also changed the alizarin red, which was kind of a deep maroon red. It had this connotation of being associated with the oil that would be used for dyeing. And so they've kind of moved away from that. They now use this bright red and have these striking double ikat patterns. And like I said, entire families are involved. As you can see, there's this little child over here and the grandpa. So I thought this was a very charming image. Here is another slide which shows you what a typical ikat weaving village in the area looks like. Most alleyways and most of the areas in front of weavers' homes have these warps that are stretched out, these ikat warps that are stretched out and drying in the sun. And although these people weave so much ikat, we seldom find villagers wearing ikat. So when I saw this lady, I just couldn't resist taking a photograph. Notice the subtle single ikat sari that she's wearing, and she's paired it with a beautiful, it's a really elegant, small checks, silk with small checks, and she's wearing it with this blouse. And she's, just a simple villager helping her son, making some ties for his ikat weft. So now let me tell you a little bit about the process. What happens is that they warp, so they create so in case you're still a little bit confused about warp and weft, the warp is the threads that are coming towards the weaver, and the weft is the threads that are going across. And so giant, very, very big, giant warping mills are used to wind enough yarn to make 3 to 4 saris of the same length simultaneously. So there are several saris being wound and several warps being wound. And this mill makes something like 25 yards of warp. And so the size of a warp is closely linked to the final product. Saris and dupattas, these large scarves, have standardized measurements, whereas yardage, which is a kind of a relatively new product, yardage for clothes and furnishings, is much more flexible. Here is a short video of how the warp is wound on these giant mills. And normally it's a man who does this. The plain red, by the way, is just the border that that they use sometimes they don't do ikat all over, so they have plain, solid colored yarn. And so once the warp or weft is wound, then a design is created, and the design is plotted on a graph paper, and every little square of the graph paper represents a bunch of threads. So the entire warp is actually divided into the number of squares in the block, in the graph. And once the design is plotted, then it is transferred onto warp or weft, like you can see. Then it is bound. So binding is done either with the inner rubber tubing of bicycle tires, or finer areas are bound with cotton thread, as you can see in the photograph on the left with the man with the pair of scissors. And so, and here in the photograph on the right, you can see how they've bound the areas that are supposed to be white, and then they leave the areas which need to be dyed. So here in this case, it's going to be dyed red. And then, these are dipped and dyed. As I mentioned before, they can be dyed, then dried, and then rebound in multiple colors. Then they are stretched out to dry in the sun. So this is a very common sight all over this area. And then after that, the warp and the weft are woven together to make fabric. Now, every single warp thread is drafted through the eye of what we call heddles. Now, heddles can be in metal, which are actually very easy to handle, but they can also be in kind of very flexible yarn, nylon yarn. And these heddles are mounted on frames, which are called harnesses. So here you can see the harnesses in the middle, in the picture in the middle. And you can have either 2 harnesses or you can have 4 harnesses for the plain weave. So what happens when a warp of 25 yards gets over? Now, for those of us who are weavers, well, what we do is we just get started all over again. We warp some more yarn, and then we thread each of those yarns into these heddles. But for a 47-inch sari, that would mean something like 3,580 threads each time. So in India, they have a very unique method which they call jointing. It's basically joining the old threads to the new threads so that they can just pull the new threads through the heddles and get started all over again. And I believe this is a uniquely Indian technique overlooked by many. I have seen it being done, and I've personally tried it out. It's a great technique. All you need is water, ash, and a little knowledge of the spinning technique and lots of practice, right? And this is actually practiced in Gujarat as well as Andhra and Telangana. Now, this is mostly done by women. They sit on the floor, and I'm going to show you a video. In the beginning of the video, she's just sorting out her threads. As you can see, on the harness are the old warp threads, and here she has the new warp threads. And you may also notice, I'll just start the video. You may notice that she has smeared some turmeric. The turmeric that is smeared on her feet is a traditional technique that is practiced. So it has nothing to do with the joining technique. It's just part of what they do to beautify themselves. So here she's just getting the threads separated. And now watch carefully, because this is an incredible skill. And that's it. One thread is joined. And she goes on for 3,580 threads. And again, something that is quite amazing is that warps are joined like this. The entire set of harnesses are lifted. They are transported back and forth, and then they are put back on the looms. And unlike what we normally see, where the warp is always wound on a warp beam, it's just bundled up and kept in a corner, and is just given a certain amount of tension. So that also helps them to make sure that all the designs are properly aligned. Traditionally, women are also in charge of hand winding the wefts, and they would use what is called an asu frame. So the curved asu frame is about 1 yard, kind of wide, 1 yard wide, with 35 to 40 pegs, and one single peg on one end and 35 to 40 pegs on the other end. And for one single sari, she would have to go back and forth 9,000 times, winding each peg with 4 threads each time, and then moving on to the next peg. So now I'm going to tell you about another school dropout success story. So this is the story of a young boy called Chintakindi Malesham, who quit school in 7th grade and began to weave alongside his father. But the only issue was that now his mother had not just one weaver to wind the weft for, but she had 2. And so it wrecked her shoulders and elbows, and she complained bitterly to her son and said, please just leave this, leave weaving, get yourself another job. I can't take this any longer. And Chintakindi was, completely at a loss. He didn't know what to do. And so he decided that he would invent a machine which would wind the weft yarn and relieve his mother of this pain. And it took him 7 years to come up with a solution. And he finally managed, and he has named it the Lakshmi Asu machine after his mother. And he has been selling this since 2009, I think, because that is also when he got an award for it. I see that it is being adopted by weavers who can afford the price. It's about $260. And I also saw this very interesting thing happening where a young man who did not have the use of one hand was actually able to make a living by using the Lakshmi Asu machine. So here's a video of that. So isn't that amazing? I thought that, it was very clever. Okay, lastly, I'd like to introduce you to the most gifted yet humble and selfless and sensitive weaver that I have ever met. This is Shankar, the person wearing the Ikat, the cotton Ikat pattern shirt in pink. And Shankar met me at the beginning of my visit of this little village. And he took me to several weavers, showing me weavers, ASU machines, warping, patiently taking me all around. And then he took me to his rich and prosperous brother. You can see the picture in the middle, where I bought several yards of Ikat material. And I nearly missed going to Shankar's own home because it was late, I was tired, and I had already spent all my cash. But I am so glad that I met Shankar, because he is this extremely gifted weaver and master artisan. Now, if you see the neatly folded fabric in Shankar's hands, let me remind you that it is a stunningly beautiful silk sari. And don't forget that a sari is normally woven in the entire length of the sari plus a blouse material. So it's called the blouse piece. And so it is something like 21 feet long and 4 feet wide. And it's a sari of a veritable tour de force of traditional weft ikat, combined with the mastery of 7 natural dyes with amazing sophistication in terms of shades of color, the juxtaposition of colors, and the adaptation of this traditional diamond-shaped ikat motif, finesse in terms of binding, and a modern take on double ikat and its principles. I'll go through all of these aspects, but let's start with the natural dyes. So it's just a lovely range of shades. He got this mustard gold using marigold and jasmine. Then he used Bringaraj, which is a natural dye which is normally used to dye hair black. And so it gives these beautiful shades of gray. The Latin name for Bringaraj is Eclipta prostrata. Then comes Alkanet or Ratan Jot in Indian, and its roots are normally used for coloring food. Acacia arabica or Babul grows in dry areas in India and gives us these beautiful shades of beige, warm shades of beige. Then we have madder, Rubia cordifolia. It's the Indian madder, which gives tones of orangey red. Sappan wood, which is a wood which is related to Brazil wood and gives shades of fuchsias to purples. And Indigofera tinctoria, which gives beautiful shades of blue. As we saw, one sari with its coordinated blouse piece is 21 feet long and 47 inches wide. So a weaver would always plan 3 parts to a sari. The first part, as I'm showing here, if you can see, follow my arrow, is for the blouse piece, which is about 33 inches. Then he plans the body. So here, this is the body, number 2. And then he plans the pallu. So normally, a master craftsman would have the ability to make certain choices, and I will again come to Shankar's choices. And so the master craftsman decides what the sari blouse is going to look like, and then he decides what the body of the sari will look like, and then what the pallu will look like, the part which is draped over the shoulder. And so Shankar planned out his sari in such a way that he dyed the warp in 3 parts. The plain yellow, number 1, is for the blouse. Then he dyed the warp in this shade of indigo blue for the body. And then another 3 feet of yellow, which is for the pallu, where he inserted ikat weft. The body is about 15 feet. So 3 feet, 15 feet, and another 3 feet. Okay. The pallu is always something that is meant to complement the body. So what Shankar did was, if we look at the entire piece, he very tastefully kept the blouse simple. Nothing happening here except that rich mustard gold with just 2 stripes which would appear at the edge of the sari blouse. So these 2 stripes would appear at in the sari blouse, and then it would also appear at the bottom of the sari when it is draped. Then for the body, he inserted nearly 200 inches worth weft. It was weft ikat, bound in these fine diamond shapes and dyed in these, series of colors. And by inserting the same weft, so the weft was dyed in the same colors, but by inserting it in the body, which was dyed blue, he achieved deeper colors. And then by inserting it in the pallu, which was dyed yellow, he got this more mellow yellow, effect. And of course, in the pallu, he also added some of these beautiful stripes to kind of break up the ikat. So very, very tastefully done. I also mentioned that he was able to do very fine binding. And if you remember, I spoke to you about Patola and how Patola is valued for its finesse. So if you look at the size of the bound area, it's about 2.5 to 3 millimeters. And upon studying Shankar's sari, I found that he too had 2.5 to 3 millimeters. I guess that is the end of what I have to share with you. I'll end with this video of Shankar folding a sari with his wife, and I want you to see how tenderly he treats his work. And that is it. So thank you. You can continue, visit designersанdartisans.com. There are a couple more Zoom events that I've planned. Shop if you like. I think a few people have been very rapid in picking up some of the exclusive hand-picked ikats that I thought I would put in the shop. But you may find some more. And if you like, you can write to me, and when I go next, I can try and find more ikats for you. And do register for events and classes and workshops. You will find all the information at www.designersанdartisans.com. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and I would love for you to ask me whatever questions come to your mind.
This was lovely. I wish I could do this. It was beautiful. And I learned a lot. I was really curious how this worked. Thank you.
Oh,
beautiful.
You're welcome.
Really beautiful.
You're welcome.
Hi, Kartika.
Hi.
I have a question.
Yeah,
The
please.
joining, when they
Yeah.
were, and normally I would think of that as knotting
Yes.
in my weaving experience.
Yes.
Is that anything like spit splicing with wool? I mean, is that basically
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you're a knitter, but you know how you can spit splice
Like,
wool,
nice. Yeah.
which
Yeah, yeah.
sounds disgusting, but it works. Is that similar? Like you're just basically using the water and the ash to kind of, in effect, spin those threads together?
Yes, I think that the water and the ash help to get a grip, because these are such fine threads, and so it helps to get a grip. So I've done this, even sometimes they actually, the ash and water, they just take very, very little. It's not like they're making a big goop out of it and smearing it onto the threads. It's really just to get that grip. But yes, you are right, and I should go back to split ply joining, because it does work on the principles of spinning. So in spin direction, it's all about spin direction. So ancient Indian yarns were spun in the Z direction, so Z. But today what I find is most of them are spun in the S direction. So what they're essentially doing is that they take two threads and then they kind of spin them in the opposite direction, really tight. And then when they bring the two threads back to the thread that is kept taut, thread that is kept taut is the thread of the new warp, it automatically spins itself onto the new warp. You see what I mean?
So and the ash helps lock it? The water in the ash kind of helps lock it in place, I guess?
Yes, but again, it's very, very little, minimal use of ash and water. It's just the tiny, tiny bit. Like you saw, she was not putting her hand into ash and water all the time, right? She just had it with her. So
it was impressively fast, really fast. Yeah.
I had sorry, Constance. Okay, I'll stop talking because I've spoken so much. I want all of you to ask questions. But I just wanted to say that I had this slide and then I thought, oh, it's overkill. But I had this wonderful slide of a young woman, a beautiful young woman sitting next to her, maybe mother-in-law or mother, I don't know, an older lady. And she had such skill that she was not even looking at what she was doing. She was watching a TV soap opera. And she was like totally into the soap opera. And there she was doing this jointing, as they call it. Go ahead, Constance, if you have a question.
The threads looked like they were incredibly thin.
Yes.
I mean, like, how thin are they? The individual threads that she's...
Yeah, these are, you're a weaver, right? No, you're not a weaver.
No.
Did you get my very fine Indian?
I did, yes. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really, really. I mean, maybe a little bit thicker, but these are so fine. They are mill spun. So mill spun yarns, you see when she was breaking them, the old and the new, it's kind of nice and tight, right? So mill spun yarns are easier to manipulate, but they are very fine. Yeah. And they do both silk and cotton.
So Kartika, how many ends per inch are we looking at in these?
30 per centimeter. Let me just do your calculation. 30 times 2. Oh, hold on. Let me see. 30 times 2.54. 76.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
I've never done anything that fine.
76. This is, I counted Shankar's sari. So I counted the silk sari that Shankar has had woven. I really studied Shankar's sari because it was, just this amazing piece. And so I wanted to study it completely. So 76 in both warp and weft. So it's a balanced tabby that they use.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
You said to look at the things that you're selling, and I'd seen them. What part of India are those Ikats from on your website?
All are from all Pochempoli, all categorized under Pochempoli. I cannot tell you which village they are from, except the sari that Shankar wove, and unfortunately that is sold. But if any of you are interested, please do let me know. Like I've written in the description, I have worked with master craftsmen in India for several years, and they are notoriously unreliable. You cannot dictate terms to them. They will decide what they want to do. So, so my philosophy is: you see something beautiful, just get it, because you never know when you'll get another one, or and so. Yeah, so each time I go, I pick up beautiful pieces. I will be putting more. I just haven't had the time between, putting this together and taking photographs. So I haven't had the time to upload more photographs. So do come back and visit the website. I'll put a few more. I don't have many, but I have some really beautiful pieces, which I would love for you all to enjoy.
Karthika,
Yeah.
I have a question. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's so informative and wonderful. I have a question about kerchief rumali, and you mentioned that they were exported to the Middle East. Seeing their geometric designs, I wonder whether they influence the kifaya, the men's headdresses which they wear throughout the Middle East. Although I had heard that the patterns of the kifayas really signify the tribes to which the wearer belongs. So I'm curious whether there is any link there.
Now that is a very interesting point, Regina, because I have been trying to find pictures. So if anybody finds a picture of a Telia Rumal in the Middle East or anywhere outside of India being used, right, and not in a museum, but being used, I would really be interested. And you're right. The fact that it could have motifs which are belonging to separate tribes can also very well be possible, because Indians and Indian weavers were very open to weaving specific textiles for exports. So although on one hand I say master weavers are not what can I say, I wouldn't say reliable. Reliable is not is a pejorative word, but master weavers have their own, aesthetic and mind. But in general, weavers would weave, and they still, I think they still do. They weave lots of fabrics which are used by specific tribes and specific people. So that's a very interesting point. I will continue to research that. I've been trying to research Telia Rumal.
Thank you.
Thank you for this. This is great. I have two questions, which I hope will both be brief. One is, you talked at the beginning about how some of the blurriness of Ikat comes from the dye seepage. But then there was also some discussion about sort of, getting the threads lined up just right. And when I've seen some Ikat being made, I've seen them like focus on adjusting, the warp to get it to line up. Is it both of those things that create the blur?
Yeah. So there are some who value the non-blurriness. So very specifically the Patola weavers, right? That is why the Patola, the value of a Patola sari is measured according to some of these criteria. So if it is very blurry, then that it's not. And of course, it's never so blurry. It's never blurry because it's just these two families that continue to practice Patola Ikat weaving. So certain areas and in certain cultures, the blurriness is valued, and in certain other cultures, there is just that much of blurriness, not too much. So yes, the blurriness comes with the dye seepage. Like for example, in this dupatta that I'm wearing, it's really dye seepage. I think that the weaver who wove it had, excellent skills. He would not miss a single weft. He would not mix up his wefts. He aligned both his, and I've seen them, aligning warps. So they stretch these really, really long warps, across streets. And then they make sure that the threads are aligned. Sometimes they even, like you say, sometimes I have seen them push certain threads in front so that they get these V-shaped patterns. But that is for single warp ikat.
Right. I did see Patola being woven once, and it was two people. One person was weaving and one was kind of adjusting to make sure it all lined up. So thank you. So my second question was about the pattern transfer. How did they do that? I've done pattern transfer like for embroidery on a flat surface, but how did they transfer it to a clump of
a bunch of threads, right? And that too, they do it with some ballpoint pens. And I always worried that, oh my God, they're putting these, ballpoint pen marks on these pristine white warps. But I don't know, they seem to master that. Like I said, the person who really explained this to me, told me that once you know the number of threads that make up each square of your graph paper, then you kind of know. And then if you look at the products and the designs, I tried to measure the size of the squares. It's like pixels, right? It's the whole concept of making designs as if it's pixelated, right? So the squares in Patola weaving are 2.5 to 3 millimeters wide. Very delicate, very beautifully woven ikats in Andhra and Telangana are also 2.5 to 3 millimeters, like Shankars. But otherwise, most of them are like what I'm wearing. So this is double. So it's like 6 millimeters. And then if you go to even bigger stuff, it's traditional motifs are usually 6 millimeters, pixels of 6 millimeters or 1.2 millimeters. 1 centimeter and 2 millimeters, so 1.2 centimeters big. So when they market, I guess they know that they have to cut the bicycle tube rubber to that size, and then they it's skill and it's practice. And they do know the number of yarns that go into each bunch. That is separated while winding.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Kartika, you mentioned that they're primarily men who do the weaving. Was there any point in history where women were part of the weaving process, or has it always traditionally been men?
Traditionally, it's always been men, but if you see in the Pochempoli handloom park photos where I show the way the yarns are ending and then being twisted and going through the heddles, remember that slide?
Yes.
Now so it's not history, so it's transitioning into modern life, and so today women are being trained to weave. So traditionally, weaving is considered to be too strenuous for women. Mm-hmm. However, winding the weft 9,000 times is a huge amount of work, and it's just you keep so it's the shoulders and the elbows are stretched 9,000 times, and so
wow,
that's how it is. Yeah. So women had certain roles. They were in charge of jointing. I've never seen a man doing jointing. I've always seen women, both in Gujarat and in Andhra. And they also do all the weft preparation. Binding is done by both men and women. Weaving is by men.
Thank you.
I
Great presentation.
Go ahead.
I can make a comment about the question about the perfect alignment on on the threads because, and this is in Uzbek Ikat, we've discovered when we were doing the exhibition at LACMA and examining the kurtas, which are there's a sort of a comb-shaped pattern. And we first thought, oh, well, every step is this little 8 thread bunches that are stepped up. But in fact, what they do is they tie them all and dye them together in a bunch. And then they individually pull up sections so that they, instead of doing all that work of retying every single tiny bundle, they simply realign the threads by pulling them, offsetting them so that they become a sort of a comb look instead of, you know, binding every single one of those. So it's very clever. Somebody figured that out.
Yes, absolutely. Especially as the warp is a is yarn which is looping. So all you need to do is just shift, and then you get your, you know, diagonal lines. I don't know if that makes, maybe a bit abstract. Sherry, you seem to be able to wind your head around it, but for some people it may be a bit abstract to, you know, to see. But basically, yes, they do that. So for simpler warp ikats, yes, that is something that can be done. For double ikats, I think they have to be much more precise. You know, they have a lot of planning and precision to deal with.
So the rhombus shapes or in the sari, is that from a shift? Is that how he makes all those diamonds? No.
No. I think that there, if you look at the way he has done it, he has actually tied.
That's the pattern.
Yeah, and it's done on the weft. So he has taken a huge amount. I mean, all the weft that goes into making a sari, and he has tied them. Yeah,
really
but
beautiful.
Mind-boggling amount of work. I really don't know how he managed to do, you know, all those shades of natural.
And so fine, also so fine.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah. He had only one like that. His he had 2 others. The one that he was folding, I showed you the video. But that was much simpler, you know. I think he had kind of realized that this was just this madness. And so he may have said, okay, this is it. I'm not doing any more. Oh, Sherry is showing us something. Okay, let me pin you, Sherry.
Showing you this offset.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
Nice, beautiful.
So these bands are, the purple is easier to see. The bands are woven just in straight blocks, like a straight block of purple, and then a straight block of pink and a straight block of gold. And then the threads are very, oh, you could really see it, can't you? The threads are pulled up alternatively, and you can tell because when you look at the opposite side, when you look at the thread, you know, you go up here, you see that, oh, this thread here is a short thread here. So you can tell that the whole thing has been pulled offset this way and then up again this way.
Excellent explanation. Thank you, Sherry. That does it. That caught the offset method for warp ikats. So that is Uzbek, right? Yeah, Uzbek ikat. Yeah, very beautiful too. I saw
19th century, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Nisha. Yeah.
Hi, Kartika. Thank you so much for a very insightful talk. So I work with the Ikat weavers of Odisha, Sambalpur, the eastern region, and I've been working with them for like quite a lot of time, like 2 decades. So my question to you is the frame that you showed. I have always had this question in my mind that Odisha has a frame that is straight, where they tie the yarns. It's always straight, and Andhra always has like a
wedge,
circular frame. So is there a specific reason why it is so? Why the difference? What difference make?
Yeah. To be absolutely 100% honest, I too have been asking myself this question, asking them this question, and every time I ask them that question, they just look at me like, yeah, that's, obvious that it has to be wedge shaped. So, why would it be, wedge shaped? Because it's really that. It's a wedge shaped, it's a triangular wedge shaped structure with a curved side, right? And so I've not got a straight answer. I'm sorry about that. I think, I don't know. I'm not a mathematician enough, or I think I need to understand geometry. So maybe I'll catch my daughter, who's much more scientific than I am, or my father, who is here tonight, and I ask them, because, yeah, when they looked at me like I was totally dumb and I didn't understand anything. But really, I think it's because I think that the distance is always the same. That's it. I think we got it. See, the distance from the middle of a circle to the edge of the circle is always the same, right?
Yeah, but if you have a rectangle frame, the thread goes like this. So then it's the same. It's all straight. You don't need to have that circle. So I mean, I have asked these questions to my weavers in Orissa, and they never had an answer because probably they haven't visited the weavers in Andhra so much. So I've never got an answer. Maybe we need to do some more research on that.
Yes. It may also be that it's easier for a woman. So look at the position of the woman, right? She's sitting on the floor. So it's very different from women who wind, warp, and weft in a place like Gujarat, for example. In Gujarat, what I've seen is that they have these rectangular frames and they have a long stick. At the end of the stick is the thread. So it has a kind of a loop, and the thread is passed through that stick. And then the woman just uses the stick to wind the thread, right? So she's sitting flat, and she's sitting on the floor, and the warp frame, or the whatever winding frame, is on the wall. Now in Andhra and Telangana, the woman is sitting on the floor and the frame is on the floor, and she needs to go this way and back and this way and back. So maybe if she has a rectangular frame, after a point, it's going to be difficult for her to reach out. So it may be something, linked to that. This is just me.
We'll have to find out.
We'll find out. And if you do, do let me know. I would be very happy.
But thank you so much for the session. It was very insightful. Thank you. I'm trying to know more about Andhra Ikat because I'm starting to work with Andhra weavers also shortly. So yeah, I needed to understand this. So that's why.
Sure. Yes. Please do stay in touch. I'd love to know more about Odisha weaving. Yeah. Okay, so there's Lee and Louise. Would one of you like to go first? Lee? Hi, Lee.
Sure. Hi, thanks so much. It was a great talk. I learned a lot. So you had a lot of questions about technique, but I have more of a social context kind of question. And that's about the community or caste of these weavers. So because Ikat is it's a difficult technique, it has some kind of prestige to it. Do the weavers tend to be of a higher caste than other weavers? And then also, like between Gujarat, Andhra, these different places, do these Ikat weavers tend to be of the same kind of caste, or does it differ in location?
It differs in location, as Manisha will tell us. The caste in Odisha, one of the castes that do Ikat weaving is the Meher caste, right, Manisha?
Bhulias.
Bhulias are there, but Meher's also there, right?
Yeah, the surname is Meher, but the caste is called Dhuli.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, they are very different from the castes of Andhra and Telangana. The castes in Andhra and Telangana are Pattushali and Devangas. So they were actually one caste. Then they split over some, issue over the worship of Vishnu. So they are both, worshippers of Vishnu. They are, I think, of a, relatively higher caste in the range of castes, because it's a little confusing. We have Pattushali and we have Padmashali. So the Pattushali are called, Pattu means silk. So these are weavers who used to weave silk, and they would weave silk for the temples, and so they are obviously of a higher caste. So the Pattushali are quite different from the Padmashali. And the Padmashali actually used to weave coarser cotton ikat. So yes, I think that definitely the Pattushali and Devanga are slightly higher in caste. Some of them, wear these threads which signify, they are not Brahmins, but they signify a certain religious, aspect or belief. Manisha, would you like to add to that? Because you may have more to say about the castes, right?
In Odisha, they are not higher up, but their history is very interesting. So they were not originally residents of Orissa. They migrated from somewhere in Rajasthan, is what the history books say. So yeah, so they're not the higher caste, but yeah, they are different, and their language is different as compared to the local people. The local language is Sambalpuri in Orissa, but they speak something, it's called something else. So they have a different language altogether. So yeah, they are different. They migrated from somewhere else.
Yeah. And then I am not sure about Gujarati.
Salvis.
Salvis, I don't know what, but they are also another group. So they are very different. Salvis are different, the Pattushalis are different. And so Pattushali and Devanga are more or less the same. And what I learned when I went in 2017 was that now they also have other castes who are allowed to come. So it was very interesting, because I remember going to a village, falling in love with one of these weavers and it's his, entire setup and everything. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go visit him the next time I go there. But the next time I went there, no sign of the guy. So I said, where is he? Where is he gone? And then they explained to me that many of these weavers are actually hired by master craftsmen, and they come from far. They weave, in order to complete certain orders, and then they go back to their villages. So they do allow, nowadays, they do allow some other castes or people from outside the villages to come in. So it's, it's quite fluid, actually, when you see.
All right, thank you. Yes, I had no idea. So.
Yeah, you're welcome. Louise? Are you still there? I'm sorry, Louise, I made you wait. Oops, I think Louise has lost patience with me. Okay, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to look. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I can look at the comments and see if there are.
Kartika, I don't know how to put the hand up.
Oh, sorry. That's fine. Please just go ahead and ask your question.
I have two questions. One, can you talk to us about the time that it takes? For example, if you take the story of Shankar, how long would it take to weave, or even from the beginning of the process through the end to make the equivalent of 6 sarees? And then, isn't it what you said?
Yeah,
that the length of the material is
6 yards, 6.9 yards, yes.
Oh, it's 6.9 yards. Okay. But then the other question is,
I was intrigued about the plotting on graph paper of the design and the fact that you found, or somebody has documented that you already found Ikat, in the 12th century or even in the 5th century and so on. So what do we know about the plotting techniques that were used in
those
in
days?
those olden days?
Wow. Those are two tough ones that you've asked, Dominique, but I will try to answer as best I can. Manisha, do you want to try or shall I go ahead? I'll go ahead. Okay. So what I did was I actually sat and timed how fast Shankar weaves. Okay. And I timed that he wove, if he would weave consistently without stopping, no water, no breaks, no thread breaks, no disturbance, no nothing, then he could weave a plain weft, okay, plain weft sari. He could weave it in a day. Or he could, if he could even weave it in like 3 to 4 hours. But every time I've asked them, they usually say, well, it takes up to, a week. So because it's, it's strenuous. You have to keep on doing this movement to get the shuttle to move from side to side. So that's also why women get really exhausted. Because when things go well for them, they are cranking out these saris. And, cranking out means that each week the men in the family are weaving something like, depending on what type of ikat they are doing. But if they are doing single ikat, then they are cranking out at least 1 sari a day per weaver. So if it is, 1 week, or let's say 5 days, they are cranking out 5 saris. So every single day, the woman is not just winding the initial weft to be bound and dyed, but she's also, after it's all been dyed, she again has to reel it into those bobbins, right? So it's a lot of work. So it's and again, don't forget, it's teamwork. So it's not just the weaver, it's also his wife. If the wife hasn't prepared the weft for him, then he has to slow down as well. So there's all of that goes on. So I would say the long and short of it is I do not know, as far as Shankar's fabulous ikat with natural dyes, I do not know how long he took, because it's really a question of mastering all those shades, all those natural dyes. Natural dyes take much longer than chemical dyes. He also had to bind all of it. He may have made a few trials as well, but that's his practice as a weaver. So maybe a month or maybe more, I don't know. I've asked, but I've not got an answer. What was your other question? It was, sorry, I got swept off by the speed of the weaving.
It was about the plotting of the design.
Yeah, plotting. This is an interesting question because it's also the same when it comes to carpet weaving. In carpet weaving in Iran, they have what is called a vagire. A vagire is a small sample or a corner of a carpet which they make, and which is used not just as a sales sample to show prospective buyers, but also for them to know what the final carpet will look like. In ancient times, well, we don't see double ikat. We see double ikat only from about 14th century. We have samples that exist dated to about 14th century. It may have been, painted or drawn, but they definitely understood this concept of, making motifs using pixels. like we do on our computers. They obviously understood that. So especially in Gujarat, if you look at some of the older saris, we see motifs which are not geometric only. It's a combination of motifs of parrots. Typical Gujarati Patola motifs are parrots, elephants, tigers, and then of course the geometric motifs. So very probably they would paint, they may have painted them on plain cloth, painted graphs, or painted what they wanted. Yeah.
I would love nothing more than that.
I have another question in terms of the identification of villages by the patterns that are used, or by the colors. I mean, when Regina was talking about the Middle East, I thought that was an interesting question, because it could also be the other way around, that people wearing headdresses with cloth may have come from other parts of the world through travelers and so on and so forth. But in terms of the patterns in the Middle East, you can identify, each village of Palestine, for example, by the pattern of the embroidery. So do you have the same thing with Ikats, that you could say, well, this village does that other village uses these colors or patterns?
In terms of Telia Rumal, it came from Chirala, which is I'll type it for you. Chirala, I am not sure if Chirala is a village or an area. I need to look up my notes. But Chirala was an area, or I think it was an area. I'm not sure if it was just a village. So Chirala definitely had this very specific, technique, which was made only in Chirala until it kind of got, transferred to villages around Telangana. So the villages around Telangana are much more mixed. However, we do kind of know that all of these more modern takes, all of these, like the scarf I'm wearing, like the scarves and the sari that I posted on my website, like I said, these are all just lumped into this one category, and we say, oh, Pochempoli. So it's a more recent tradition, hence it's not village specific. As I said, villagers travel to fulfill orders for master craftsmen. I do want to tell all of you, I hope you have not all gone. I'm putting the name of a film called Susman by Shyam Benegal. And I have to thank my mother for telling me about this. Shyam Benegal was a very important filmmaker in India. And he made this absolutely beautiful movie about Pochempoli weavers and their plight. This may be dating a little bit, and you will find it on only YouTube. So I'm really sorry, the quality is terrible, but do watch it. Write down your questions, because it's very, tradition specific, and culturally, you may not understand certain aspects, but I would be happy to answer any questions. So I think in Pochempoli, it was a very different kind of setup. The weavers were, they were already weaving. They were distributed amongst several villages. And so it's not very village specific. In Odisha, oh yeah, Manisha, I have to come to Manisha for that, because Odisha has some exquisite, area specific. So I don't know, again, if it is village specific or if it is...
Not village specific, but for sure area specific. So Odisha is a very interesting place. It has single ikat, it has double ikat, it has warp ikat, and it has weft. So mostly weft ikat. It has silk also. So very specific villages would only do silk. They would not do anything else. Yeah. Another areas would only do double ikats. So there are, you could tell by the motifs and all, if they are traditional. And Orissa, mostly you will find very traditional textiles, because the local people take pride in the Orissa textiles. So it has not changed a lot.
Yeah.
You see a lot of traditional textiles, and that is why you can really make a difference from one textiles to another.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting about Orissa. And then even the Western Orissa and Eastern Orissa, the way they are also so different. So even within Western Orissa, there are a few pockets which would look very different. And then Eastern Orissa also has like 2 or 3 villages where you can tell, okay, so this is from here, this is from here. So yeah, Orissa is interesting.
Yes, yes. I do believe that their traditions are dating from way back. Somehow I believe that it may not be completely true. Maybe there was a mix of, the Bulias coming from Rajasthan, but, one of the theories, so this I was going to talk about in my class on Ikat, but since we are on the topic, one of the theories that has been propounded is that Ikat actually emerged in Austronesia. And so it actually traveled all the way to the coast of India.
Yeah.
And I think that is how Orissa first began to create Ikat. So
Indonesia, right?
Indonesia, yeah, all of these areas. So, but it did not emerge according to this theory, and I can substantiate it in my full-length class, but according to this theory, it actually begins in Austronesia, in certain islands. And then people would travel. It was incredible how much people travel. And so they brought this technique, and then it was taken to incredible heights in India. And then there was this back and forth exchange. India was so rich in indigo. And so, the indigo and natural dyes, Indians were master dyers, as we know. And so there was back and forth. It was not like only one direction, right? So there was back and forth between India and Indonesia. The Patola Sarees were considered to be sacred in Indonesia. Then they started weaving their own double ikats. So I think Odisha really deserves an entire, like another full session. And then on top of it, they use beautiful silk. They use tussar silk. So, right? So the tussar is this natural beige color. It has its own texture. They have their motifs. So Dominique, coming back to your question, the Odisha saris have very specific motifs. They always have a lot to do with coastal culture, fish, conch shells, ducks, then of course the Rudraksh.
Yes, Rudraksh, yeah.
Rudraksh is a seed which is holy for all of us, or all Hindus, sorry, not all of us, sorry.
Okay. Tom Murray is doing a program on Friday night and Saturday on extensive program on Indonesian textiles, which will include lots and lots of beautiful ikats, mostly 19th and early 20th century. They're not as refined as the Indian ones because, well, the ones that he collects are not the silk ones, but they're
worth it.
But beautiful. And he talks about Chris Buckley, who shows where the dividing line is that goes straight through Indonesia, which is on the left or on the east is warp ikats, and on the west side of this line are weft ikats. And that's a very interesting theory. So that he's traced. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Okay, so I hope all of you have signed up. If you have not, write to me and I will forward Sherry's. Sherry, I signed up, but I don't know if I.
Yeah.
No, I have kept it.
You did sign up because you signed up on Friday night.
But to share with everybody. Can you just send it to me again? Then I'll share with everybody.
Okay, and it's in the chat. If anybody sends to our email address, we'll send you an invitation. if you don't get one already.
And some of you already know Tom Murray. He had talked to us once before. And here I am putting a book for all of you. It's called Ikat, Textiles of India by Chelna Desai. It is the one and only book that has been written. I hope I will be able to write a book someday. Maybe Manisha, you can join me. And I really would like to write about Indian textiles. We have to.
That's my Bible.
Yes, it is.
Oh, I've had that book for years.
Yes. So it is, yeah, it is the one and only, well-researched book on Indian textiles. But then that was written when? Way back in 1970 or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's old enough.
Yeah. So all of the Andhra, the innovations that are happening in Andhra and Telangana, I think are worth looking at in much greater detail. Looking through my chat, if anybody can find questions.
Karthika, I have two questions. One, thank you. This was very informative. On the jointing, have you seen the jointing? And we saw them doing the jointing with silk, and I've seen the silk jointing in Laos as well, but they're not doing the double Ikat, so I didn't know if that had a bearing. But the have you seen it also done with the cotton?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And are the cotton double Ikats, are they as finely woven as the silk in terms of, you had 76 ends per inch on the silk roughly, were the cottons that fine as well?
Maybe a little, the threads would be as fine, but there may not be as much EPI, so not as much ends per inch. They may be maybe 70.
Yeah, but still pretty
also,
fine.
Yeah, but I think it's also because cotton tends to shrink, so they allow for a little, airiness.
Right, and also mill spun the cotton. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But I'm excited to hear that you have seen the jointing in Laos. Because it's a fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Sherry has posted that. Thank you, everybody. There's Sherry, thanks. I have two Pochempoli Sarees. Okay. But yes, Pochempoli Sarees are just, they're well known all through India, and we, most people know them like that. So very popular. And Patola, the issue with Patola is that it is next to impossible to get Patolas. There are just these two families. I got in touch with one of the younger, boys in that family, one family. He said, yes, I'll make you a dupatta. This is how much it will cost. I was ready to do anything. I just wanted my Patola. But no, like I said, master craftsmen, unreliable. I'm sorry I'm giving them such a bad reputation, but at the same time, it's, that's reality. So when you
don't get me started on that.
Right? Yeah, you can sit and talk to them for hours. You can give them, whatever you want, all the shades, all the whatever you feel like, but you'll say, and if you say, okay, I want an orange sari with a green border, he'll, if at all he responds, and if at all he makes it for you, he will send you a green sari with a pink border, and you'll be like, what? This is not what I asked for. So, yeah.
I can put you in touch with Patola weavers. I know I have a friend who's from a traditional family, the Salvi family.
Yeah, I'm happy to re-engage with Rahul of the Patola Salvi family, but he has to weave what he promises me, right? That's the thing. But he explained to me, and he said that he works as an architect during the day and a weaver during the night. So that's also, that's his excuse, I guess. So I do forgive him. But yes, I'm always interested, and I'm always interested to learn more. So I'm open. So Manisha, please do get in touch. I think you have my email, right? I can type it for you again if you like. Should I? I can do that. It's not going. Yeah, there. Okay. Any other comments, questions? I'm so glad that all of you came. Please do continue to, support and admire these hand-loomed textiles. I know I'm very, very happy that I have one of my young students who is training to be an interior designer. Vanessa, I'm so glad you're here. And I just hope that, the younger generation will start using some of these textiles, not just as garments or clothing, but maybe even for interiors. So very, very happy that you came. All right, I think, and Marilyn says, thrilling to see Telia Rumal being woven again. Yeah. I mean, it's slightly different. It's adapted to modern taste, and it has become more like dupatta than the Telia Rumal. But yes, it does exist, and it still continues. Okay, so maybe we should call it a day unless there are any other questions. Anybody who's like Dominique and doesn't know how to raise a hand. Don't worry, Dominique. I don't think I know how to raise a hand either. So.
Oh, usually I can, but somehow today I don't see it. So
oh, I see.
That's all right. Oh, yeah. Finally, maybe no. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Thank you very much. It was fabulous. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, if there are no more questions, we'll call it a day and we'll meet soon. There's a fabulous speaker coming up, Madhuvanti Ghosh, and I'll send out email reminders.
Okay, wonderful.
Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm going to sit and chat with my parents for 2 minutes. I'm so touched that they woke up at 3:30 in the morning to come for this presentation.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. Yeah.